more over here, or close to the door? Sure. All right. That way we don't got far to go with chairs or anything. Okay. Table, chairs. So I'm like in between. And we also got another helper, Cody, here. And if you don't know Cody, Cody's dad and his whole family are one of the biggest vendors, barbecue vendors up and down the East Coast. His father is out of Florida, and his father travels all over the country here to vend barbecue, and they've been doing that for quite a few years. So Cody has quite a bit of background doing that with his dad. But he seems to have changed his career direction lately, but I'm glad that he's here. I really am, because he's a real good friend, he's a real good helper. So hopefully he's going to help us get everything cooked up, and then we'll have some good eats before we go. We'll get to try some good food here. So we'll get going here. And it's the neat thing, barbecue just really brings together a lot of different people. And that's one of the things that really has drawn me into it. I mean, I've been cooking, outdoor cooking, campfire cooking, my Dutch ovens. I've been doing that since I was probably about my son's age. And a few years ago, I kind of branched out and decided I wanted to give barbecue a try. I went out, I bought myself one of those little charbroil water smokers. Probably only about 30, 40 bucks there at Walmart on sale at the end of the year. And I thought I would cook a turkey. I figured I'd start with a turkey there, but they really don't give you a whole lot of direction in that thing. So I threw some charcoal in there. I went and bought a package of smoke wood, threw some chunks of wood in there, set it there, and I knew I had to at least hit 180 or somewhere around there to get that turkey done. I knew at least that much, but then I noticed that the smoke stopped. So I thought, well, I'll throw some more wood in there. So it probably went for about 3-4 hours maybe. So then it stopped again. I thought, well, I'll throw some more wood in there. And by the time that turkey was done, it was probably about 13 hours later, and it was totally inedible. You just could not. It was just so acrid, so rough tasting, such heavy smoke that it was just something you would not want to do. And I thought, like, man, do people really enjoy this here? Or and then I just kind of realized that I just kind of was doing things wrong and needed to find some direction. And and I've really come a long way during that short amount of time. That was probably probably about the time that he was born. So we're probably looking at 13 years ago. So, but for the last about the last 6 or 7 years, I started getting into competition cooking, and I knew it was something I wanted to try. I knew it was something I didn't want to do by myself. It's not something you want to go out and do by yourself. But there's a really good competition going on just not too far away. If you got time later on today, you want to get out over to Wilson on 425. It's right at where the brewery is there, the Woodcock Brothers Brewery. Actually, all the teams are over where the old Pfeiffer plant is, right across the street there. And they're going to be there all day today. They're competing right now. They have KCBS competition today, which means they have pretty set turn-in times. So they're going to probably, they'll be done about 1:30 is their last turn-in. They're going to hang out. Their awards ceremony will be about 5 o'clock. Then the teams get to relax for a little bit. And then tomorrow they're going to do a kids' queue. And then they'll do a New England Barbecue Society sanctions a grilling contest. So they're going to switch from doing a barbecue contest, which is today, into doing a grilling contest. So they'll be doing that tomorrow too. So there'll be quite a few teams out there. So they'll be out there all weekend. So if you do get a chance, just try to get out there, see what's going on. I know it's a little confusing with the way the teams are there and the booths are there, and it's something that I walked into the one over in Clarence quite a few years ago. I think it was about 2004. And I kind of walked around and not knowing when any of the turn-ins were. Nobody was around. I was wondering, well, where do I get something to eat? I want to eat some ribs here, and there's like nobody's around. You don't know what's going on. So, but it takes a little while to figure out. But once you do, I tell you, you get bitten by the bug, and it's just something that, I'm sure all these guys here, and even Robert here, has been out competing with me and my good buddy Noel that unfortunately passed away last year. So I haven't been able to do much, so I am really happy to be up here and talk to you. But like I said, the one nice thing is there's just young, old. There's just such a wide range of people that we meet that are associated with the barbecue community, and we really call it our barbecue family. And that's something that Cody's experienced too, because when he came up here right away, Cody offered to come help me cook down at the soup kitchen for Joanne down at the Magdalene Project, and he stayed with me there. And I've helped him, he's helped me, so we've really become good friends. and they are like a family to me. So it's just a great thing to experience, and really if you do get the chance to experience it, give it a try or see what it's all about. So there's a lot of vendors out there too, so if you want to taste their food. But we're going to do that here. So these guys are going to help me warm up some food. We're going to get to sample some things and see what some good barbecue ribs are all about. So I just wanted to kind of touch on a couple things. And the first one is, why I think barbecue is so important, or so, it literally is like a $4 billion business in our country these days. $4 billion is spent, if you add up like all the restaurants and everything from selling grills and all that, barbecue sauces out there. There's something like, it's astounding, like 11,000 registered barbecue sauces on the market these days. So I mean, you can easily go out and find all these products like this that are prepackaged, or I can make my own. The nice thing about making my own is I have a little bit of control over what's going into that product. And it's funny, I do up at NU. I've done a class on sauces and marinades and things like that. And I'll always go to the store and I'll try to find the cheapest bottle of barbecue sauce I can find. And I usually can get one for about 99 cents. So you think, why would I want to make it if I can buy that for 99 cents? But I think, what's in that 99-cent bottle? It's probably a little more than some corn syrup and some, some artificial smoke flavor or something like that. So the nice thing about learning some of these basic techniques is, you can tailor it to your tastes, and everybody has kind of a different taste or flavor profile that they're aiming for, and. Then the thing about that is nobody's right or wrong. So we can make it to the way we like it. To if it's good barbecue to us and it satisfies your audience, then I'd say you're doing well. Whether it be the restaurant here or for the competition, we're cooking for judges. So, and the big thing is when you are competing, that it's so different between what I would cook for the judges compared to what I would cook if you guys were to come to my yard and we were to have a big party here, or like I'm gonna show you right here. And the reason being that there's just such a variance in what the judges are looking for compared to what I consider good barbecue. And I'm sure Cody can attest to that. Some of the things we do as competitors, especially when it gets to that brisket, it's almost darn near inedible to me to go back and try that brisket after a competition, because we inject it with such odd things like sulfates and MSG and things like that, and that's all to trick the judges into picking our barbecue over everybody else's. But like I said, so to actually have competition style ribs or anything like that, I don't know if you'd really want to eat those, because it's great if you're only going to take one bite, but if you're going to sit down and eat a rack of ribs, it's not what you want to do. So, but I'm going to show you a little bit of what we do, a little bit how you can change some things, and hopefully from there you can take the techniques home and apply it to the way you want to make your own barbecue. So, but the nice thing about barbecue, and I think the reason that it's so popular, is that there's, it's funny, if we watch like the chefs on TV, the TV chefs, they all talk about this layering of flavor. And no matter who you want to watch, whether it be like, I remember going back to Graham Kerr, the Galloping Gourmet. I mean, my mother used to sit me down in front of the TV watching him. Or if you're talking about Emerald or Bobby Flay or any of these guys that are out today, and the big thing is always that layering of flavor, that idea that you want to along the way you want to add these flavor, different things, different techniques, and there's so many opportunities to do that with barbecue. Starting with usually we're going to put on some type of rub, some kind of dry rub or spice rub. Even in the cooker, it's our choice of woods we're going to use, our choice of fuel with the charcoal. Right now we're burning some apple wood in the smoker behind me with some lump charcoal. When the ribs are done, we're going to sauce them. I'm going to add some stuff to the ribs as they're cooking. So there's just all these opportunities there. As they're cooking, we can baste them. Some guys might like the flavor of liquor or bourbon, something like that. Some people don't. But you always have that opportunity to add that in here, and that's what makes, I think, barbecue so popular. Okay, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to kind of touch on it quickly here, just so you're aware of it. But food safety is always such a big issue, whether it be the restaurant or even if you're cooking in your own backyard. And I know when we're doing that, we don't really think about it. But the problem with cooking, especially, and something I'm aware of is down at the food kitchen, is we deal with what we call high-risk populations. So mostly the older people, younger people, anybody with a compromised immune system, people that are sick or with diabetes, people that have substance abuse problems too. Their immune system's compromised. So if there's any of a chance for foodborne contamination or contamination, you really have to try to prevent that. And even when we're cooking in our backyard, you got to figure we're usually cooking for a party, or if I'm going to throw a pork butt on there, I'm probably going to feed about 20 people with that. So it's not like we have this opportunity for just one or two people. We could potentially infect maybe a whole group of people. And then if we start getting into catering, usually we're talking 100, 200 people at a time. Now, like Cody with his parents out there vending like that, how many people you guys serve on a weekend there? Thousands at a time. So it's something we all need to be kind of concerned about. And I did take my Serve Safe. I am certified in Serve Safe. So if it sounds boring to talk about foodborne illnesses and safe practices in the kitchen, I had to sit through a 6-hour class and a 2-hour exam so I could pass the exam on this. And at the time, it wasn't something I needed to do. It was just something I wanted to do. And I'm kind of glad that I did, because now it's come into use, especially around here, especially with the restaurant, with the food kitchen. And there's some counties in the country where you actually have to have at least one person that is certified with ServSafe certification on during every shift that the restaurant is open. So we don't have that around here. They do. The closest county right now is Monroe County. Monroe County does require that, but that's coming. So we're gonna see that here eventually, where we're gonna have to have at least one ServSafe certified person on your staff during every shift that the restaurant is open. I have this little PowerPoint presentation I'm kind of referring to, and I was going to try to put out a little bit bigger monitor, but it just didn't kind of work out. But if you really want that, just let me know, and I can easily Facebook it. You're all on my Facebook here, so I can easily Facebook it to you. There's just some things on here, and it just talks about 76 million cases of foodborne illnesses each year, and that's why that's so important. And I think one of the biggest things is we have to worry about is cross-contamination. Is we don't want to when we're working with raw food, we want to keep raw food separate from the cooked food. That's where we tend to make the biggest errors, and that's why most of the time you'll see us when we're working with things, we're working with the gloves like that. When we're done, I'm going to wipe everything down with my Clorox disinfecting wipes and things like that. But it really is an important thing, and we should all at least have it in the back of our head that we need to watch for. We need to watch and not try to pass around any foodborne illnesses.
Cross-contamination.
Cross-contamination, yeah.
You don't cook chicken, raw chicken next to beef.
And that's another good point with the chicken. The problem with chicken is salmonella is usually our biggest risk like that, and even with eggs. And a lot of people say, well, geez, my grandfather used to eat raw eggs every day. He used to drop them into a cup of cream and slug that down in the morning. That was his breakfast. And but the thing was is they lived during a different time, and the food. The problem they say is that the food source that they feed the animals, the feed, is contaminated. It's contaminated with salmonella, and it's passed on to the chickens and things like that. And if you ever seen how they raise the chickens, literally in cages, stacked one on top of another like that. So things are done a lot differently than they were years ago, and that's why we kind of need to be worried about that. And and then everybody tells me, well, what the heck, I'm going to cook like 500 degrees in there. I'm just going to cook off all the bacteria. And yes, you will, bacteria you will, but there's other things like viruses, and the heat does not kill that until you're well over 600 degrees. So you have to be aware that cooking like that is not the only way to destroy foodborne bacteria or viruses or anything like that. So. Okay, and I have a slide here that kind of talks about the competition, our rules at competition for KCBS. And when we compete in KCBS, we have to kind of qualify for meet certain criteria. And that's one of the things I actually come around and inspect, to make sure we have things like a fire hydrant, when we have to have a 3-bay sanitation set up. We have to be using a disinfectant for the when we're doing our wash. We have to make sure we have some type of food thermometer. And this is kind of the best one you could get here. This is a Thermapen. But every craft has their own tools, and for the cook, this is probably the best you could buy here. This Thermapen. It has an accuracy to like 3 degrees either way, and within 3 seconds you get an accurate reading. And the range on here is from minus 50 to 300 degrees Celsius on here, so that's 572 degrees Fahrenheit. So I can test oil. If I'm going to deep fry something, I want to make sure my oil's hot enough. All I need is one tool here. This one here is, you can see here I bought the fancy one with the flames on there. And they always come out with these special editions every now and then just to kind of trick you into buying another one. And the new one now actually has a backlight in it there. You can push the button and the dial lights up, which is great during the competition because we're usually out there in the middle of the night trying to see. But this is the tool. I mean, you don't have to have one that fancy. This is kind of an older style like this, one of these little digitals. Taylor makes them. And it's not a bad little unit. It works pretty good too. Or you can have what you see back here on the pit back here is we actually have a probe here. This is a Maverick, and it has this remote control here, and this will go to about 100 feet, so I could wander around wherever I wanted to here, and I could still see what the pit's doing over here with the readout on there. And then I can set this. It has timers on there where I can set, but kind of a neat little unit. Any questions so far? Or? Guys good?
Time to eat?
Time to eat. Well, we got to think about putting that food in there too. So, all right, I'm gonna skip some of the history stuff here. No sense boring you with that. I mean, I find it really interesting. The only thing I will say real quick is we always kind of we can read a lot of stuff on the internet about where barbecue started, and if we think about it or we talk about it. I went down to Memphis and I took a class from the South Carolina Barbecue Society, and they were pretty adamant in some of their research that barbecue is, truly one of the only American cuisines that there is. That if you look at some of the historical facts that they've been doing barbecue here in the U.S. since before 1600, about 1594. So if you think of 1594, oh my gosh, here the oldest building around here, I'm going to say is probably the French castle up there, Fort Niagara. And that was built in 1725, so you have to think that almost 200 years before the French were building the castle over there at the fort, they were making barbecue down in the South Carolina area, down Georgia, northern Georgia. So it truly is an American cuisine, and it's just like I said. I mean, it's just such a great thing that it just crosses so many boundaries with age and race and male, female. There's just so many people involved with it. Okay, I just got this one really cool folder. I don't know if you can see this on here, but I don't know. Can y'all see that on there? There's a bunch of Native Americans there, and this dates back to about. Did it go away? The illustrator that drew that was back in 1747, and if you notice that. I mean, you can't really see what he's cooking on there. I mean, it looks like a bunch of critters. And again, if you want, I can send you this as a PowerPoint presentation. But the neat thing is to realize that when the French came over, what they would do is, obviously we didn't have cameras back in the 1700s. So what they would do is they would take an illustrator with them, and he would document what he saw. And if you look on here, exactly what they're doing is barbecue. I mean, the whole defining factor of barbecue is the idea that we're cooking low and slow in the presence of smoke, and that's exactly what these guys are doing here. Now, the only thing is we don't have the right critter. I mean, we're not cooking anything we really know about here, and what we mostly consider barbecue is either pig or beef around here. What's that, Cody?
Squirrels!
Squirrels? Yeah. I don't know, but if you look here, I don't know, they look like alligators or snakes or something they're doing here. But it was the Spanish that brought the pig to the U.S. They about 1560s they brought the DeSoto. If you go back to your 5th grade geography, there brought the pig into the present day Florida. So it really is an American cuisine, and one of the only cuisines that we can actually take credit for here in the U.S. Okay, I have that chart on the wall over there. I don't know if I don't want to get any feedback going here, but if we think about ribs, most of the time, you know, there are beef ribs, there are lamb. Most of the times we're going to talk about is definitely pork. I mean, that's now, Cody, have you ever cooked beef ribs at all, or do you like them at all, or you know, most
slow smoke and steam.
Yeah, most people aren't really crazy about beef ribs. You know, real giant, real heavy beef taste like that. But most of the time, if we're talking ribs, we're talking pork. And usually there's a couple different kinds there. And what it relates to is where up on that animal we are there. And if you look at that diagram, you'll see there where the bone structure is on the animal itself. And down on the side here, if we look along the lateral side there, is where the spare ribs are coming from. And if you get up higher on the back, up to the top there, in that section there is where we're going to get what we call baby backs, or actually the term is loin ribs, is what they call loin ribs.
St. Louis.
Well, I'm going to talk about that. Those are going to be trimmed down, but I'm going to show you how we trim those down in a little while here. Now, actually, like baby backs, if you look at these are what we would consider baby backs here. Do they even say baby back, or do they say? Yeah, it does say baby backs. Actually, they're what we would call loin ribs or loin back ribs. And what they do is the butchers kind of rate everything. You might hear them like say technical terms like 3.5 and down, or 1 1/4 and down. And what that is the actual weight of the rack of ribs itself. And we don't start getting into baby backs until technically I think it was like 1 3/4 and down. So the weight of any rack of ribs, and this one's over that. I see that right here that it's over that. So technically we wouldn't be a baby back, but this would be a loin back ribs. And like we were just joking before on the price on these, man, $7.99 a pound. Can you believe that? That is just astounding that it would cost that much. Now, hey, I'm a bonus shopper club, so I got them for $4.99, which is still a pretty good deal. But you're going to always find that baby backs always run way more than spare ribs do. The reason being that it's a much leaner cut. And if we look at that, I'm going to take them out of here. Maybe Robert can open up these 2 packages for me here. And we're going to look at that rack of ribs.
Love.
He will. He's a pretty knowledgeable kitchen help and has grown up around a couple barbecue teams here, so.
Say it ain't so.
Probably much like you over there. And you'll notice with this rack of baby backs that the bones are kind of a lot smaller than the spare ribs. They're a lot more curved, and again, that's because of the placement. If you look on the placement of the bone structure of the pig, that the racks, the baby backs, fall much higher up on that carcass than the spare ribs do. And of course, because they're smaller, they're going to cook a lot faster. A lot of people like them because they're a lot more leaner than the spare ribs. The spare ribs tend to be a lot more fattier. But also, the thing is with that fat, a lot of times comes flavor. So the thing is when you get to these spare ribs, they tend to be a lot better tasting, at least in my opinion, as the spare ribs. Now we're going to open up that rack of spare ribs too, and you can kind of compare the two. And basically, what the baby backs like this, or these loin back ribs, is if I'm doing any competition or even just cooking them in the backyard, there's not really a whole lot of extra prep I have to do here. Usually the butcher has them trimmed down pretty good. We're going to see on that rack of spare ribs there's still some bones down the bottom there that's almost down to the breastbone there. Now, the one thing we might do is we're going to kind of talk about in a minute here. Now, Cody, like when you guys do baby backs, do you skin those off there?
Yes. Take a rag.
Yeah, Cody. Well, of course, everybody's kind of got a little bit different technique about how they do things here. So I'll maybe let him try to do his way, and I'll explain it my way. But the one thing we're going to do here is, if you look at this rack of ribs, you can almost see that there's this membrane here, or what they usually call like silver skin. you can see that on there, that membrane there. And there's always kind of this controversy on whether we're going to take that off or not. Now, I always like to skin that off. The reason being that if I'm going to cook that, and if you don't cook it at a high enough temperature in the smoker, it'll stay on there, and it's almost like I don't know, like a piece of plastic on there, or a piece of cellophane sometimes. So I like to get that right off of there. And then the other reason I like to do that too is because if we don't, then we don't get much penetration for spices into the meat tissue. So, but you know, the one thing is I notice a lot of guys that vend just don't have the time to do this. So if you go out and you buy ribs from Rib Fest or something like that, a lot of times you'll see that sort of paper layer on there. Now, I always find baby backs are very tough to get that membrane off, and the reason being that a lot of meat these days, the butchers will actually enhance what they call enhance the meat. So before the meat comes through and we get it, it usually is either pumped full of some kind of saline solution or there's other things, flavors too they can do. But what they do is when it comes through the line in the plant, there's a lot of needles that actually inject the meat with solutions that are supposed to enhance flavor and texture and things like that. And that always makes this really hard to do. You can see he's really struggling with that. So we'll see if he can get this off now.
Why would you leave it on?
Time factor. A lot of vendors just do it because they just don't have the time. My gosh, how many you guys were selling like something astounding, like 70 racks an hour or something like that when you guys were out at Rock City last year? So they just don't have the time to do that. And what they do is, since most of the ribs are pre-prepped, is a lot of the times they come pre-cooked and it's on there anyway, so you're not getting that off. So. But who would want to eat that? I really, have no intention to eat that. So my first step and what we did is, that was the first thing we did, is we took that membrane right off of there.
I'm sure a lot of people have ate ribs and tasted that before on backyard.
Tasted it, or it's when you're biting it. Like I said, sometimes it's like a piece of like cellophane or a piece of tape on there. Now, usually, if you're cooking at a high enough temperature, and that's always kind of a subjective thing, is what temperature we're going to run our smoker at. If we cook with a high enough temperature, you'll actually kind of render that right down to nothing. But it depends. And if you do cook with a low temp, it won't render out. So you do need to remove that membrane.
I think one of my favorite things about barbecue is there's so much variety with it. Whether you keep the membrane on or the type of rubs or spices you use, it all kind of comes together the same type of way, but it's all different.
Yeah, and like I said, there's really no right or wrong way, and it's kind of funny working with Cody here. We've cooked a couple times together, and I got my way, he's got his way, and usually what we do is we take a little bit of his idea, we take a little bit of my ideas, and usually you can find us some middle ground, or take what works for you. And like I know a lot of the guys like Paul Kirk, when they give their presentations, some of the big names in barbecue, Mike Mills, Paul Kirk, a lot of these guys I had a chance to meet when I was down in Memphis and down in Greenville, South Carolina. But a lot of them will tell you, there's more than one way to do this, and I'm just going to tell you, this is my way. This is just what works for me. I'm sure there's many ways to do this, but this I know this works for me. This is how I do it, and this is the way I like to do it. That's not to say that another way is wrong. That's just to say there's more than one way.
Part of the brisket, though.
Yep. That's a Scooby snack there for the cooks in the kitchen. And what we're going to do is, that's the next thing we're going to do, is we're going to show how we're going to trim down that other rack. So and that's one thing we'll get into there, is we're going to take off some of the extra meat that's on that full rack of ribs there. And we were kind of talking to do that, but it's what we're going to do is we're going to, on this rack of spare ribs, is we're going to go from this full rack of spares right here. And I just picked these up. I almost forgot today, Brett, that I was on my way here, and I thought, oh my gosh, I said, we're supposed to demonstrate on how we cut a rack of ribs. And that case that we bought, we did that all the other day. We cut them down, and I thought, oh, I better stop and get one here.
Cool.
So I stopped over at Tops, and $5.49 a pound. Another great buy from their store there. But so we're talking about $20 in meat here. So we really want to make sure we don't ruin this $20 in meat. But what we're going to do is we're going to cut this down because...
you were being sarcastic, right?
What's that?
With the $5.49?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did way better than that. Obviously, if you buy in quality or quantity and you shop around, Usually you can do better, but it's not cheap. I mean, it's funny that's how barbecue kind of grew up. Is the idea was throwaway meat. It was another cut that people didn't want to eat. When you get into especially brisket that's how brisket came about. And the idea was you're going to cook it low and slow, and you're going to render it down where it's something tasty like that. But these days, it's caught on. People are charging a premium for meat these days.
There's two reasons why we're doing this, Rob. So you can teach us how to cook ribs, and because Nashville North is going to start catering and doing barbecue.
Absolutely.
And I'm so go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I got a question for you guys. You guys are professionals and all. Do you prefer using a knife or the meat scissors?
To trim them down, I always use a knife. That's just how I was taught. Yeah.
I use a curved boner. Okay. You know what that is? Yeah.
Yeah. This is a boning knife. Yeah.
It's a straight bone.
This is a straight boner. Yeah. It sounds a little funny there, but yeah. Usually a curved knife works a little better. A fillet knife is a fillet knife is basically a type of boning knife. But everybody's got their own technique, and I do like to use that. I also like to use. This one is very sharp. This is my French chef knives, and I really like my French chef knife. Now you can see there on this rib here, if you can't get a good look, come up and take a look at this. Same thing here, that you can see that silver skin on there, and we're going to pull that off of there. And now I can see that flap of meat is gone. Usually there's that other flap there.
Yeah, it's there.
That skirt.
Just cut it up.
They just kind of.
It's the brisket bone.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I actually watched him, Cody. He took that right out of the package. And he had to take that over to his bandsaw and make those 3 or 4 cuts there. And the reason being that if we weren't gonna do what we're doing now, hang on there for a minute. Don't do that yet. I want to do a little explaining first. If we're not going to do what we're doing now, there'd be no way to get through that bone right there. There's a big piece of bone there.
Bring it out here.
So if you look on this rack of ribs here, you've actually down the bottom here, we're starting to get into almost down here to where that breastbone is on the animal there, and that's what that hunk of bone is down there at the bottom. Now, if we were gonna cook and eat this, we could just kind of cut this apart here, and that's why he's made those cuts there for us, is so we could actually separate those into separate ribs. But what we're going to do is what most of us guys like to do that do ribs here, is we're gonna make this into what they call a St. Louis cut. So what we're going to do is just going to present way better. It's going to fit in our smoker way better. What do you guys do this when you're vending? Do you buy spares, or do you buy them already cut like that?
We buy spares because we call them rib tips.
Rib tips, okay, right. Which is what I got in that little package right here. So you can see this package here, and another great buy here. I $5.99 a pound. Wow, what a deal I got here, right? And basically, do you know what this is? This is basically what he's going to trim off. It's the throwaway part here, but it is good meat. We do have a use for it. And don't do that yet. Don't do that yet, because I know he wants to get ahead of me here. But I want to explain why you're doing that is where I'm going. But like I said, the reason that we don't have to do this. We don't have to. We could throw that in the smoker right now. We could have these like mammoth ribs like that. But if we're in the competition sense, of course, or like I said, to fit in the smoker nicely, they present way better. We're going to trim this down into what's standardly called a St. Louis cut. Now, we could buy them already cut from the butcher like that, but generally there's a little bit of extra expense involved in it. And also, like I said, there's some good meat here. We're going to make some use out of that meat. And it's unfortunate that I've watched a lot of competition guys do this, and that meat goes right into the garbage can. And there really is no reason to do that. I mean, we can cook and eat that. What, do you guys do anything with your rib tips? You just sell them and cook them? Sell them and cook them, yeah. A lot of guys, I know what I'd like to do is my, my background's Italian there, so we'll make Sunday sauce, and I'll use that in the sauce when I'm cooking my sauce, because my cousins grew up, we always threw pig's feet and spare ribs in there anyways, so we'll make some use out of that. It's good usable meat.
You left them on and sold them that way, or
No, we actually.
No, they trim them off and they just sell it as a separate product. Yeah.
Then we take it, it's called a rib tip.
So what he's going to do here, now finally I'm going to let him do his thing there, is there's this big piece of bone right there, right? So like I said, what the butcher has done and what I watched him do this morning is make those cuts there. So what he did is he kind of pushed in there, and if you kind of feel in there, you'll almost feel where the end of that bone starts to end, and then it becomes sort of cartilage down in there. And what he's going to do is he's making that cut. Go ahead, I'll finally let you make your cut you want to make there.
Sure.
Yeah, go right ahead. Go right ahead there, bud. So he's going to make that cut there, and he's going to find where that cartilage is coming into where the bone is, and then what he's going to do is make that into a nice straight looking rack of ribs. And again, that what he's cutting off there is exactly what's in the bottom of that other package I just bought as the rib tips.
That's all the cartilage. It's with the solid bone, but they cut it up for
So that would be rib tips now.
Those would be what they would consider rib tips, yeah, or riblets. Sometimes they're called riblets like that. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll save those in the freezer, and in the middle of the winter I'll just throw them in the crock pot with a little bit of sauce, and I'll cook them down like that, and you just kind of nibble them off the bone like that. Some good eats there. But another thing too is, I don't notice on there, is that skirt meat. Sometimes you have that extra little flap on there, but you can see where they've almost trimmed that right off here. And what we'll do is usually, that'll be the first thing I'll attack, is I'll take that piece off. And the other thing on the bottom there is, if you notice that on the bottom, you have that whole other muscle that's running down there along that bottom. And if I were to leave that on and just kind of separate these into individual ribs and to eat them like that, what would happen is when I got to that other piece, that other muscle down the bottom that's turned the other way, it's almost going to feel like a chewy type of bite in your mouth. So,
beef jerky.
and that's what you do with that, yeah.
That's what we consider. When you start chewing on it, it's like a beef jerky.
Okay.
But that's the same thing.
So now we have, what you would call that St. Louis cut, that rack of ribs. It's going to fit nice and easily in the smoker. It's also going to present really well if we're in competition setting. That's what most of us in competition will do. Some of the other things I want to, and he's going to take that skin off too there. It's funny, we just talked about the easier way to do it, and this is how I was taught. Was somebody gave me a metal skewer. This is just a regular metal skewer. And what I like to do is wiggle this along one of the bones there. Once I get that done, I'll get up under there and get a paper towel, and I'll just use that to pull that off. I've seen guys use Phillips head screwdrivers, anything blunt like that.
Little motor oil helps. Good seasoning.
Butter knives. Sometimes you can just kind of wiggle your finger in there and get it off with the finger. I mean, in a pinch, I'll just use a regular knife, which is probably what you would do there. So, like, if we go to the store, like, is that my alarm going off there?
Yeah, you turn the heater on.
Okay. Okay, if I go into the store, I'm going to buy a rack of ribs. Which one am I going to grab? Am I just going to go for the first one that I see? Probably not. I'm going to take a little bit of looking around. Again, if I'm competing, there may be some things I'm going to look for that I wouldn't normally think about doing. Like the rib bones. If they're nice and straight, I want to look for nice straight rib bones. Certainly wouldn't matter if I'm just going to eat these in my backyard or cook these for a bunch of friends. But if we're competing, we want some nice straight looking rib bones in there. Also, we want to see some nice pink looking meat. We don't want it to look too red looking. And the fat should look nice and white, and it shouldn't be too yellow. Now I notice these are kind of not the greatest rack of ribs, but of course I didn't really have much of a choice this morning. So, and the other thing is, like in the package too, is purge is what they call purge. Sometimes you look in a package of meat, it looks like we'll call it blood, but it's not really blood. It's what they call purge. It's usually where the meat and the muscle tissue is kind of mixing with the.
Seen it?
Yeah. No, I got a question for you, Rob.
Sure.
Have you tried that new rub out? It's Old Bay rub?
Old Bay. I'll usually use that more for if I'm cooking turkey or something like that. I know they got a couple different flavors like that.
Give us some scary.
No, they just came out. They just came out with that Old Spice rub, and I tried it.
Old Bay, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Old Bay is technically or more considered like a seafood type seasoning, but there's a lot of guys that tend to like using it on turkey. If I'm doing turkey breasts, that's the first thing I'll do is I'll reach for the Old Bay. Yeah, and it's kind of a really unique thing, and it's a really good flavor.
You can ask everything I put Old Bay on.
Puts it on popcorn.
Yeah, I know a couple of guys that do that, and it's like this one here. I'm going to talk a little bit about rubs in a minute, because that would be our next step. Is we're going to season this rack of ribs up after we got it all trimmed down. But and you can see that all these are all commercial rubs I have out front here, and if you think about why I bought them. Mostly it's not so much the taste. I was, like the packaging might have attracted me. Here, how could we not buy like Duck Dynasty rub? You have to at least give that a try. Larry the Cable Guy. I mean, I didn't even know the dude had rubs out. He's got a whole line of stuff out these days, and this is for fried turkey, and it's funny. It has a really heavy sage taste to it.
It says secret recipe. Get her done.
But the funny thing here, I mean, isn't he like kind of like pro-American all the time, right? Only in America type thing, right? And it says right on here, spices sourced from around the world, produced in a certified facility in China.
Ding dong.
Isn't there something kind of wrong with that?
He's got a show called, like, what was it?
Only in America.
Only in America, yeah. Isn't that crazy? Okay, this is a really interesting one too. I mean, spice rubs are usually based on like salt and paprika, and this one actually is a mustard based, like a dry mustard rub. That was a pretty interesting one here.
95% of the seasonings and rubs you get have 32% MSG.
MSG, and I have that right here.
Actually,
Monosodium glutamate. Yeah, monosodium glutamate right here. MSG. This is pure MSG. That's all this is. Now, you probably dig around Mom's cabinet. There's probably has that at home. Here's some just in the pure form right here. I bought. I just never really do anything with it other than use it here for demonstration purposes. A lot of commercial rubs do in fact contain MSG, and the thing with MSG, it's another thing we use as a competitors too. A lot of times we'll inject our meat with it, and it doesn't really have any flavor of its own. It's not really like a salty taste or anything. The idea that it enhances the taste of any other flavors that are in our mouth. So if we mix this with anything, it's going to enhance that taste. And the idea as a competitor is, the judge is taking 1 or 2 bites of everybody's ribs down the line, and they're saying, oh, whether, I like this, I don't like this. And the idea is if we put the MSG in there, there's just a little bit something different. So when he gets to our rib and takes that bite, his taste buds are going to kind of wake up and say, hey, there's something a little extra there. So that's the idea with the MSG. Now, a lot of times we hear a lot about MSG in like Chinese food or Chinese restaurants like that. They're pretty well known for using a lot of MSG. And there is some people that do claim to have sensitivity to MSG, where they can cause headaches or, certain symptoms like that. But, I don't really find that that it really. Are you bothered with it at all, or? I don't know. And like I said, the one thing is, after we compete, we're cooking all this food. We certainly don't want it to go to waste. We're always trying to eat it. But man, the brisket, sometimes I just cannot eat the brisket after we've injected it with stuff like this.
We don't use that on the brisket.
Yeah, I try not to use it, but we were big on using like some of the commercial injections like Cosmos and Butcher's when I was competing, so we did use it quite a bit. But I would prefer to make my own rub, and we're going to make that's what we did with the ribs that are in here that we're going to eat. And I'm not going to go into that now. I do kind of have a whole class on that, but we got some commercial rub. We're just going to throw these on just so I can give you an idea how much seasoning we're going to put on here. So I'm just going to use some of this commercial rub that I got here, just all American spice rub. If I'm gonna make my own rub, basically it's just a few basic ingredients, and I have some recipes again on this PowerPoint presentation. You're more than happy to have a copy of that. Just if you want to just Facebook me or email me, I'll be more than happy to send it to you. But basically, a rub is just kind of a mixture of either. Usually there's salt in there, and it's kind of a chemical reaction. Is what we're going to do on that meat. There is we're going to use the salt. And we're going to kind of try to use that it'll draw moisture out of the meat. It's a process called osmosis. We probably might remember that from science class. And with the osmosis, it's going to draw because the saline content between the cellular texture of the muscle tissue and the outside saline temperature, there's a differential in the sodium content. It's going to draw moisture out of the meat. So that's the idea of using the salt in the rub. So if we're making a rub, we have to consider that we need at least enough salt. Now I know everybody's kind of salt sensitive these days. We don't want to use a lot of salt, but it really has a very important function in our rub. So we want to make sure we have enough salt in there to do that. The other thing is brown sugar. Usually we have some type of sugar mixed in that. And the idea is when we pull that moisture out of there, it will mix with the brown sugar, and that's going to caramelize on the outside surface of the meat, and that's where all that good taste, that good bark that we're going to form on the outside is. So what we do is we usually just kind of take a few other things along for the ride. Basically, we're going to usually take some some celery salt, or a lot of times we'll use paprika in there. I'm usually pretty heavy on paprika, and paprika also helps with the color. Because of the coloring, it'll help with the color of the ribs when they're done. A lot of times garlic powder, onion powder. I mean, there's a whole array of different spices we could use in there. But again, the nice thing over doing that, rather than trying to use some commercial product, is basically all we're getting is a lot of sodium and a lot of MSG right here. If we buy something, already made up. And for what it costs, it's easy enough just to buy some raw ingredients myself and tailor that to my own taste like that. And you can see I'm really big on Penzeys here. There's a Penzeys down in Buffalo, down on Elmwood. For years I used to mail order to get their products. And then I found when we used to take a family vacation every year out to Michigan that there's actually a Penzeys out in Michigan there. So I used to go to the store, which saved me a little bit of shipping until the store came into our area here. But, again, you get what you pay for, especially with spices like that. You want to start with some nice fresh ingredients. And I only try to buy, if you notice, the nice thing about these is they're really small little containers. Because any kind of ground spice like this is usually only good for about 6 months. Usually if it's like a whole bean spice or, like peppercorns or something like that, usually about 2 years you can get on those before they kind of lose their potency or lose their taste like that. So I only try to buy the quantity that I know I'm going to use for the year. So the nice thing is I know some of these things I'm really not going to use a whole lot, so I can just buy in these little quantities like this. It's great to go to the store and buy a giant thing of paprika there for $8, but if I'm not going to use it, it's going to sit on the shelf for 4 years. Then what good is it? It really wasn't much of a savings like that. So. But I really do try to hunt around. This is from Trader Joe's here. This is Himalayan salt. So this neat little grinder. So every time you use it, you're gonna, you're cracking open the salt and you're getting really fresh taste. So, it really does good to sort of source your ingredients the best that you can afford, and it really makes a difference in your final product. Okay, so we're just gonna put some rub on here. I'm just going to use this out of speed, instead of trying to compound anything here again. There's some basic rubs, like I said, I have recipes for. I have like literally hundreds of rub recipes at home. If anybody wants them, and usually I'm going to tailor it to what I'm cooking. I'm also going to play with this idea that I know I'm going to take these ribs and we're going to sauce them when they're done. So what I'm going to do is, because I know I'm going to sauce them with a real sweet sauce, I tend to use more of something maybe a little more saltier, because I know I'm going to pair that where I want that sweet salty thing going on. So my rub might be a little bit more saltier than it would be if I was cooking something else. Let's say if we were doing like pork butts or something like that, big huge cut of meat. I want something that is going to stand up to that big heavy flavor like that. So my rub is going to be way more savory to it than it would be if I'm doing ribs. So basically, I know I'm going to do ribs. I know it's going to be kind of a salty, very mild type of rub. So I'm going to pair that with the sauce that I'm going to use at the end, the end process here. So what I like to do is we're just going to put some on here. We don't have a whole lot of room to work here, so it's going to be a little tough. But I'll let Robert do this here for me. And I found this is kind of a cool little thing. And again, with the cross contamination, I don't want to dump the rub. Dump my fingers in here as I'm touching meat and putting it on here, putting my fingers back in the jar, because that's going to contaminate, my rub. So what I'll do is I'll pour a little bit out. I always find it certainly works great to have, a partner working with someone else. A lot of times, we would one person will work the meat, the other person will work the rub. If I'm working by myself, what I do is I found this at like, a dollar store, and I'll put it in there, and that way I can put just enough rub in there that I need, and I can shake that on there, and I won't contaminate my whole jar of rub like that. Now, another big thing too is some of us will use, do you use mustard at all, or oil? No? Okay, some guys are really big on this. It kind of was popular quite a few years ago. But the first thing we might do here is sometimes I'll use something like either mustard or I'll use like olive oil or something like that, and I might put a light coat on the ribs, and that'll kind of help that rub stick to it. It'll also kind of help with the bark formation. But and basically the weird thing is if I use mustard, by the time that we put this through the whole process that we're going to hear, you won't taste the mustard in the finished product at all. And basically what we're doing is mustard is basically mustard seed and oil, so we're just kind of utilizing the oil that's in the mustard here. But what we can do is, some people will like to slather this on. Again, sometimes I'll just go with straight olive oil. If I know that I want these ribs to be like super sweet, again, we're going to cook for the audience that that we want. We might know that we want these ribs to be like really super sweet. I mean, you can almost push it to the fact where it's almost like meat candy, where it's that sweet. I might go with some pure brown sugar right now. I might just rub some brown sugar on here, sprinkle that in, rub that in. Then we're going to go with the rub here. But I'll just let Robert. We can put some rub on here. You want it in that can there? Or?
Hey, slow down. That's expensive.
I don't know if he has enough in here, but the idea is we want to give everything a real good coating here before we bring this over to the smoker and we smoke this. And again, we're just gonna, usually I'll just, rub it around with your hands, or you just, some guys do, some guys don't. Some guys say, look at your, if you start rubbing it, it's uneven on there now, and they just go with the sprinkle technique. But I always just kind of pat it in there. I'm gonna put on a little bit more than he has there right now. Another thing I'll do when we're competing is, we're going to put it on. We're also going to make sure we don't forget the ends of the bones too. We want to make sure we rub that down the ends there. So we're going to put it down the sides here. And what I'll do when we're competing is for my finishing touch is I'll take whatever rub that we're using at this point here and I'll powder it. I'll put it through like my little magic bullet and I'll powder that rub up so it's real fine texture. And as a very last step, we'll just take that and we'll sprinkle that down where the bones are on the ends. Because if you think about how you eat ribs, most people will grab that and that bone end they'll put in their mouth first. And if we have that little extra bit of rub on there, as a judge, they would taste that first and taste that flavor profile that's on there. Now, are the other ones in the cooker there? Or?
Yeah, they're all
okay, oh cool. We're doing really good.
Yeah, I showed up.
I appreciate that you did. Barbecue is all about friendship to me. That's, like I said, they're my barbecue family, and I got to go out there last night and hung around with a couple other people I haven't seen in a long time and have a few drinks, and that's what it was all about. Was all of our kids have grown up together, and they all hang out together. They all kind of run around the whole barbecue place. We're all kind of usually in a fairly enclosed area or a gated area. So, I feel really good about letting the kids kind of run around and all night, and they have their fun, and we all sit around and, they start to get their food ready to prep, and, we have some dinner together and have a couple drinks, and that's what it's all about is, having some fun and seeing our friends and visiting with our friends.
The atmosphere is great at competitions too. Everyone there is usually really friendly.
Yeah, I've met some of the nicest people I know are, have something to do with barbecue or the barbecue community.
If you ever get in competition, just remember, you're going to be drinking a lot.
Some people do, some people don't. There's always a few adult beverages around. We'll put it that way.
Looks good.
Looks really good there. So our next step, unless if anybody's got any questions there, it would be we're gonna put this over in the smoker, and then we're gonna let it do its thing for a little bit. And everybody, I guess the first question everybody always asks me is how long is it gonna go in the smoker, right? Everybody wants to know how long it's gonna take. You can see we got these over here warming up there. We might need a little bit more. No, we'll leave that one. We'll cook it. Yeah, we're gonna put it in a pan and then we'll just take it home and cook it or something like that.
We're going to put that in the pan.
In the meantime, I'm going to show you this little smoker we got going here because, I'm sure everybody doesn't have this big thing behind me here. And what I should have done, too, is that gas grill. If we can always look at that gas grill inside, too.
Yeah, come on up. 1/4 inch pole.
Yeah, they're coming along real good.
All right, everybody. Strawberry digging.
In a little while, we got a couple more things to talk about. Then we want. Usually, I always tend to start them with that skin side down. Is how I want to do them. I usually don't even flip them either. I'll start them that skin side down, and then the other thing we're going to talk about again is we're talking about how long. And I don't know off the top of my head, I would say probably. Oh, I got a friend that sticks them in that cooker for about 7 hours, and I thought, boy, how long you're saying?
Well, Southern Pride.
Well, it depends what kind of cooker you have. Is the point, right?
Exactly.
What kind of cooker you have. Now, basically what I use at home is I have a kind of a bigger version of this drum back there. Because I don't, I never really had a big fancy cooker here to use. So what I did is I built a drum smoker.
Good. Hot? No.
No.
Burn yourself so many times you lose feeling.
I'm sure.
Now this one's a smaller version that actually my son Robert here built. And this is what you call it, a drum smoker or an ugly drum smoker. And I have one that's a 55-gallon drum. And the nice thing about my 55-gallon drum is I actually can fit maybe 3 racks. If I trim them down like we talked about, we can fit about 3 racks of ribs in there. This one here, I think we would have a tough time trying to get a rack of ribs in there. I might be able to cut it in half. I didn't mind cutting it in half, getting a rack in there. But he built this one actually more for cooking chicken. And we did find out that I threw a pork butt in there, the last cook here, because I only needed to do one. And I thought, wow, what's the sense of firing up that big smoker? I'll just use this little drum there. And it just was perfect. I mean, it just held temperature great. It was just rock solid, about 230, and that's where it sat. And to me, that's where I want to be. Is I want to aim about 225, probably no higher than about 250. I'm where you're going to be. I know some guys that'll swear by a little hotter temperature, maybe 275. Certainly wouldn't want to cook over that, because then we start crossing that line into really we're kind of baking rather than smoking. What we want to do again, the defining factor for making barbecue is we're cooking low and slow. So I usually, where are you usually? Like I said, 230 is my target. That's where I want to be.
230 if you got a beer can shows up the chicken's ass.
Yeah, you never know. Again, where you're going to be. All depends on the cooker you have. That big 55-gallon drum of mine, I'm usually right around 235. That's perfect for me. If you notice here, it's just a few holes in this drum. If you want, you can come up and take a look here. There's a lower rack down the bottom is where we put the charcoal in there. This upper rack up here is where we put the food. And so we're getting a little bit of direct heat going on there. It's not really what we call an offset smoker. It's more of a direct smoker. There's a little bit of convection going on, a little bit of conduction, a little bit of direct heat in there. But really is a little efficient smoker for what it is, and certainly doesn't cost you much to build. Just kind of proves that you don't need some big fancy $11,000 piece of equipment there. If you go out to that barbecue festival, you'll see some of the guys in the smokers they have invested in there.
The green egg.
Yeah, those are nice too.
Yeah.
Not too bad though. Set you back about $1,000.
$2,000.
Maybe 2 if you get the carrier to roll the thing around your yard.
Is what, porcelain?
Yeah, those are ceramic, what they call ceramics. They're Kamados. It's built on a Japanese design. They're nice cookers, but not really portable. That's what I don't like about them. Not very portable. These days, we see a lot of things going towards like backwoods, where it's kind of an upright, almost looks like a refrigerator, cabinet type style, like yours inside there, same kind of a thing. That's just seems to be where things are going these days, rather than the old offsets or big tanks. Stumps, there you go. Yeah, that's another one. Some of them. And then we're going to try to nab a rack off this smoker over here. Can you get a pair of tongs or something, or can you do it with your hands? I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to use a technique they call 3-2-1. So I'm going to cook them for 3 hours. Then I'm going to wrap them. I'm going to cook them for 2 hours wrapped. And then I'm going to take them out of the foil, and that last hour I'm going to put them back on the grill there. But what I find is 3-2-1 never seems to work enough for me. And because of my cooker, I think my cooker cooks a little hotter than they figure. And 2-2-1 seems to be about where I want to be here. So I think that's what we did with the ribs that we're going to let you try here in the restaurant. We cooked them 221. We cooked them for 2 hours, just like we showed you, all seasoned up there. And then after 2 hours, I'm going to grab a rack of ribs off here, and we're going to wrap them in the foil. And this is going to give me the opportunity to put a little bit more flavor in there. Yeah, those, if those are, you know, we can sauce those too, as I got the sauce on the bottom. Before I do that, I just want to mention real quick too, as a barbecue cook, this is always my best friend here, this apple juice. I know this sounds kind of weird, but the thing is what I'll do is a lot of times I'll put it in the squirt bottle. And anytime that I notice if I'm checking my ribs in the cooker, and it depends on what type of cooker you have, sometimes they're starting to look awful dry. So what I'll do is I'll use the apple juice and I'll squirt that on the surface there. And what that'll do is it'll kind of add some moisture back in. And the thing about apple juice is that when you mix it with the meat juice like that, it takes on that meat flavor, so it doesn't stay as apple juice. It just adds a little bit of sweetness because of the apple juice, but you'll also get some extra flavor because it'll mix with the meat in there. But a lot of times we'll do that. Some guys, what they do is, as it's cooking like that, they might mop it with, this would be a mop. I mean, it looks like kind of a really tiny little version of a floor mop here. And they might be mopping or basting, what we would call basting. We would come on here as it's cooking here, and we would add some, you know, some kind of liquid to that, usually apple juice. You guys use any kind of bastes or anything? Apple juice, just apple juice? Yeah, there's some crazy stuff out there. A lot of bourbon is a lot of times they'll have some kind of mixture with bourbon. They like, you know, again, if you're into that, you know, cooking with alcohol or like that flavor, you can use bourbon at that point. There's a lot of different, you know, recipes out there for mops like that to do that. Generally, I won't though. I'll just use the apple juice. I may squirt it if it looks a little dry. Another thing it does too is it also sort of slows down the cooking process. So it's going to cool down the meat. It's going to slow down the cooking process, so I can extend that a little bit longer. As you can see here, he's going right where I would go there with the honey.
Just a little bit.
Do you do that? Yeah, you do. Like a lot of times, what we do is brown sugar too. You put any brown sugar on, you can go right ahead and open that bag there.
Moisture in.
And then the other thing we use too. Now I don't know if you guys do you use parquet or anything like that? Parquet, yeah.
Isn't that like parkour?
Yeah, right there. Yeah, that's why that's there.
Oh, the instant butter.
Yeah, instant butter. Yeah. I don't know if I would with this. It hasn't been refrigerated. But what we did is the ones that we already cooked there, because that's already cooked anyways, is we used a little bit of margarine. I just melted it in the pan. Then we were talking about why would we use something weird like that? But it's going to add that little bit of richness back in. It's because of the fat that's in there. The thing with butter is, you see, he's just kind of sprinkling getting some extra flavor going in there, sprinkling a little bit of brown sugar on there. I know some guys that'll put a little bit of molasses in there.
What's your shot?
Yeah, and the big thing is if you want, you know, heat, if you're into heat, you want to add a little bit of hot sauce, that would be the time to do that. Yeah, right at this point here.
Whoa. Put some sriracha on.
Yeah. I know, like I said, I was telling Brett there that my good friend Noel took a class with Johnny Trigg. And his big thing is the tiger sauce. He'll use the tiger sauce, which is a type of hot sauce, and he'll add that in at that point. The reason I have the red stag there, it's a good idea. Did you end up doing any with the red stag?
Some of the rib tips.
Okay, we tried that on a few of them there. That's a really good flavor with that is the red stag. I'm not much into alcohol flavor there, but I actually really do like that with a little bit of red stag, and we've done that a lot for competition like that.
Only $13.99.
But yeah, the other thing I will add is usually we will use some parquet, but I could not find. I don't know why I could not find any when I went to the store this past week to find this. So we ended up just melting a little bit of margarine in the microwave, and we just took a ladle and we just kind of ladled a little bit of that butter on there, or I should say margarine, not butter. I don't like butter; it tends to burn, so that's why we use the parquet. You could use clarified butter if you had the intention to either clarify it or buy it. Very expensive to buy that. So it just seems parquet is just a little bit more cost effective, and it seems to work just as good. So I'll just put a couple lines on each ribs as it's in there. Again with the brown sugar, and honey is usually my other ingredient I'll go to there is the honey. And I went out to the honey farm there not too long ago. A really interesting experience at the honey farm. I didn't realize there were so many different flavors of honey. And lots of different flavors. Nice thing was is they let you taste them all out there before you bought them. This is actually a buckwheat honey, and it almost has a molasses taste to it. It's so dark and rich like that. But that little bit of extra sweetness on there with that margarine, that brown sugar, that's all going to caramelize back on the surface of those ribs, and it's going to make for some really tasty food here. Now I also got some agave nectar. A lot of guys will use this quite a bit in competition. The one thing is being diabetic that I shouldn't be eating all that brown sugar there. So if I use something like this, it has a low glycemic index, won't raise my blood sugar. The only problem when you start getting into like even with the brown sugar is if you go to something like Splenda or anything like that, it won't have that caramelizing effect like the regular ingredients. But I do like to use the agave nectar. It's got a real good taste. Certainly if you want to give this a try, you can get a spoon and we can give it a try if you want to try it. Real good taste. A lot of people use it in coffee like that as a sweetener in coffee. Just a good natural product. Tastes real good. Yeah, I've heard guys using molasses like that, but usually that's about it. That's probably my pretty standard thing. Is even Johnny Triggs, that's in his class he teaches. He ends up using the parquet, honey, brown sugar, and he will add a little bit of hot sauce at that point. So I'm just gonna let them rock and roll again in there. We're just gonna leave them in there for probably, like I said, 3, 2, 1 always ends up working a little bit. Yeah, go right ahead. And even the rubs too. I know I got a lot of kind of weird looking, commercial rubs, and these two are from kind of big on the competition service here, the OBQs. And boy, I just love this honey rub, Butcher's honey rub, man. Really good stuff. Just got a really great, well-balanced flavor, not overly salty like that, or that kind of, I don't know, if you taste the bacon salt, it just has that kind of fake kind of commercial taste to it, and you don't get that in some of the other rubs. That's why I kind of like to blend my own. But yeah, feel more than help yourself if you want to give any of these a try, or try any of the sauces or anything like that. The one other thing that I did try there is in competition is we went to a little bit, instead of using the brown sugar, I went to maple sugar. So we went to I took the kids down to a maple sugar house during this past, when was that? Geez, real early in the year, right? March, I think it was in March. We went down to the one in Gowanda, and we got to watch them tap the trees, and I bought this down there, and just, certainly it's a great thing to put on there to give a little bit extra sweetness to the ribs. So again, we're going to let them go for, maybe an hour. I don't think I've ever not had them. If I'm doing 3, 2, 1, it would be 2 hours, but to me, in my cooker, that's a little bit too long. So probably about another hour there. We're going to let that stay in the wrap there for an hour. After doing our 2 hours on wrapped, we're going to wrap it, let it go for an hour. Then we're going to pull that off, and we're going to cook it for that final hour without the foil on there. Now where's that? Oh, here's this rib rack here. Yeah, you can sauce those. He's going to sauce up those ribs. You want to maybe poke that Thermapen, make sure we're getting up to that magic number 165 is where the Department of Health says we need to be to have safe food reheated. So we're going to try to make sure that we don't violate any rules here. So we'll check those out. And they do smell awful good here. If everyone wants to go out and get a good whiff there. What we're going to do is we're just, as our final step there, after we cook them, we're just going to try to brush on a little bit of sauce at the end, and we're just going to let it cook on there, let it caramelize as our final step there. You want some help with that? Hang on. You might want to flip those over. Okay, I got that rib rack there too. Now, if I had a real small, especially like my drum, where I could only lay down maybe 3 racks. If I go to this, I can stand up maybe, here, I can fit 1 here, 2 here. I think you're only supposed to use these big spots here.
6.
Huh?
You can get away with 6.
6 on there, yeah. Well, you could use this one here, or you could use that other one. I like that brush. This one's a nice fancy one of those, what do you call here? Silicone. So they're nice, easy to clean these days, the silicone ones, rather than horsehair or anything like that. He's just going to sauce those up for us, so we got something to munch on a little while here. And all I did for that sauce, again, any commercial sauce you could use, you can make your own at this point here. What I did here is I made a real simple sauce, and that's why you see this bottle of Coke hanging out on the table here. Basically, all we did is we just took kind of the simplest sauce you can make here. 2 ingredients. I took well, we made a big batch. We made a nice big jar of ketchup and a little bit of Coke, and I cooked that down on the stovetop. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but if you think about it, there's some good ingredients in both of those that are basic components of barbecue sauce. If that Coke there, I'm sure it has a ton of sugar in there. It also has some nice caramel coloring. That's what's going to give that sauce. And if you notice that sauce in that squirt bottle here, there's one right here. Got a pretty good color to it there.
How much of each?
Yeah, like, you know, what I got there, almost like, you know, equal quantities of both. You know, when we used like a 2 liter, right, and it was a big container of ketchup. Yeah. So that seemed to work out pretty good.
And how long do you take?
Until it reduces to maybe half, you know. Keep tasting it along the way. I mean, certainly you could make it a little fancier if you want. You could throw some Worcestershire sauce in there. You could throw, you know, maybe a little bit of rub. I think I put a little bit of rub there in at the end just to kind of give it a little extra kick. But real simple, real easy way. I mean, to me, it just has a really good taste. It's going to work out really well here, and certainly it's a little bit better than that 99-cent sauce there from Aldi's or whatever we're going to stop and buy. So it's a good thing to try. Any questions there when he's working away? Anything?
I agree with you with the brush, like the brush you got. I got one of them at home.
Sure.
I love it.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, you can just throw that right in the dishwasher there, and that cleans up really well. Sometimes even these horsehair ones, they're nice, they're cheap. If it gets nasty, just throw it away. But sometimes the bristles tend to fall out too, get all over your food.
For the longest time, I'd go buy the big packs of paint brushes, and that's what I use.
Sure.
Because you can just throw it right away.
That was weird.
Well, sometimes I'll just
Especially when they end up in the sink.
Yeah, it's good on a disposable like that. And, you know, that's another point though. I mean, it's good. It's disposable. You're not spreading around germs or contaminating other surfaces.
Occasionally you'll forget and put it right in the sink. Why?
Yeah, right.
Oh no, just throw it away.
That's right. That's right.
We just did a big cookout, what, Saturday, Brett?
Yep.
The baby's birthday party. I cooked for 4 hours doing hamburgers and hot dogs for a 2-year-old.
Well,
80 hamburgers?
80 hamburgers and 50 hot dogs.
not bad.
We still have enough hot dogs to last this month.
Well, those are coming along pretty well here. Looks like we'll be eating pretty soon here. So again, if I was to be doing my foiling there, I would unwrap those ribs, and I would just at that last hour, I would put them back on the smoker, and they're almost going to be overcooked at that point. The problem is that foil is going to hold a lot of moisture in there, and it's almost going to cook that meat till where it's almost falling off the bone. Now, technically, that's a little bit to the point where they're overdone, but when we put them back on for that last little bit there, they'll tighten back up. It'll get to the point where it's really a good texture, where most people expect to find ribs. Or, you know, it's funny, I'll go to a lot of restaurants, and I'm sure Cody has too, and everybody brags, they'll tell you, yeah, our ribs are so tender they fall off the bone, right? And I say the first thing to them, I said, I'm a barbecue judge. I said, at that point, you overcook them.
Sonny, we boil them.
They boil them. Yeah, he's a southerner down there, and he says, he kind of grew up doing that, and, you know, a lot of guys will do that, but like I said, I think, if you try this way here, you're certainly going to maintain a lot more flavor. You know, a lot of that...
I'm definitely going to try it.
A lot of that flavor went away with that water when you put them in the water.
Did you watch Restaurant Impossible the other night? They showed a guy that was doing ribs. He smoked them all in the back room, and then he had so many left. He put them in plastic bags. He was reheating them in hot water. Is that legal?
I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting. I know a lot of guys will do that with pulled pork. That's what they'll do is they'll they'll take the pork, but what they'll do is they'll vacuum pack it, and then they'll reheat it that way. And that's kind of what I did the last cook I did. For our blacksmith, it's funny that both Robert and I have gotten into blacksmithing after going through our barbecue thing here, and it's kind of related in that it's a lot of fire management. I think that's kind of the that guy thing with playing with fire, But I really enjoy both things for that reason. But that's what we did there. Is I vacuum packed the meat that we cooked. We had done some. What were we cooking there? What do we do for the blacksmiths? What do we serve there? You remember?
Squirrel.
No, it was either, I can't remember. It was either pork or. But that's what we did. That's a lot of the vendor guys these days are kind of getting into the vacuum packing and reheating like that, because the thing about that is you don't change the texture of the meat. All you're doing is you're adding heat to it. And if you go into like a commercial kitchen where they cook what they call sous vide, where they're cooking in water in the same type of thing, in a water bath, and they're bringing that water up to the temperature that they want their finished meat at. And by doing that, you're not overcooking the meat by adding any more heat to it, and you're bringing it up slowly like that. So that's kind of the technique that a lot of people do.
Like next class, can you teach us how to do pulled pork?
Pulled pork, yeah, that sounds like a great thing. Yeah, or chicken too. We also got a chicken class.
My mom knows how to do that perfectly.
Oh, come on, we gotta do the leg quarters. That's my thing. I love leg quarters.
Yeah, Cody likes cooking with chicken. Cody's got for a while we were using his big old cooker there that his father pulled all the way up from Florida. So
Little boy. That's the name.
that's it there. I got too bad you can't see my thing here. I got a picture up here of the rendezvous. I said kind of went to Memphis, and first thing we wanted to do was go to the rendezvous. It's a very interesting, well-known barbecue place in downtown Memphis, and literally it's in an alley in the middle of the city. So you have a couple security guards there at the end of the alley. They kind of help you get down the alley without anything bad happening to you. And you go into the basement of the building, go down the stairs into the basement. There's this big, huge pipes that out the outside that's for the smoker, the chimney on the smoker there. But he was Charlie Virgos. He was a Greek that started his own technique. He bought the building. They had a restaurant upstairs, and he realized that there was a barbecue pit down in the basement. So he fired up the pits, and kind of known for doing a little bit different style of ribs here. What they do there is they cook it almost a dry style. So what they do is they cook the ribs, and they really don't. It's more of a grilling thing that they do there. They don't really cook them slow, but they cook them on this big pit. It's kind of a brick wall. It's got some doors in there. They open it up. They're cooking over charcoal briquettes. Kind of an odd thing to see in the restaurant like that, but. Then what they do is they baste, as they're cooking, they use that baste like we talked about there, and they use a vinegar sauce. And they put that vinegar sauce on the ribs like that. And then what they do is when they come out and they're all done, instead of saucing them like most of us would think to do, they actually put the dry rub on at the end there. So it's a very different technique, caught on pretty good down there. And Memphis has this whole wet rub versus dry rub kind of rivalry going on. But very interesting, and I do have some recipes if you kind of care to try that, but kind of a different technique. It was kind of neat to go there after reading about that, hearing about that. Everybody wants to go to the rendezvous and try the ribs over at the rendezvous. How are we doing on time there, Miss Ann?
You got about 30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay. My last thing I really talked about here, again, was on judging, and we kind of touched on that already about overcooked meat. Oh, let's talk about a little bit when they're done. This all plays into it. Again, we talked a little bit about it before. When are they done? Maybe Robert could snatch a rack of ribs off there, one of the other racks of ribs. Again, I kind of mentioned there that if I were to poke my thermometer in there, I'm probably going to want to be about 196, 197. I would expect to see that as kind of a temperature to when they were done there. Here, let me want some help with that. Hang on. How about one of those there? Yeah, we need to get those a little hotter there. What you can do is we can put some more charcoal in there and leave that open there. But we'll just kind of talk about when they are done like that. But what I usually do is I don't really go by temperature so much as I go by feel, and I'll take a toothpick and I'll just poke it between two of the bone sections. And when I can feel that toothpick just sliding in there like butter, then I know that we're done. And that's the point. I'll usually start saucing them like that. And I don't want to I don't want to put that sauce on. I think that's the other big mistake I made when I started barbecuing, and a lot of people make, is chicken. I know how many times did people do that with chicken, where they'll sauce the heck out of the chicken, they'll throw it on the grill, and then it's burning on the outside there, and then you go to eat it, and the inside is raw, as red as can be there, and you know, it leads to a lot of frustration. But you know, if we're going to put any kind of sugar-based sauce or ketchup-based sauce on, there's a lot of corn syrup in that ketchup, and if I put that on too early, that's just gonna char the outside there. It's just gonna burn. So I only want, if I'm gonna do that, we're doing here, you notice we're just doing that kind of at the end. So maybe that last 10 or 15 minutes, you know, no more than about 20 minutes towards the end, I'm gonna do that, because otherwise it's just gonna burn on the outside. And if I do that again, if we, you know, with the chicken, it just doesn't have enough time for that chicken to cook by the time the outside's done there. So usually we panic and we think, oh my gosh, how black that's getting, I better take that off there, and you know, then we realize it's not cooked on the inside. Yeah, I've done that too. I mean, I've made my mistakes along the way and sacrificed a few pieces of meat to the meat gods there, so that's all part of learning. I remember I was cooking the one time, and we had a chicken cooker, and we had about 40 chicken thighs on there. And I would always make that fire so small, like Robert's got going back there. That's all I want. Nice little small controlled fire. You hear? We're not calling the fire company out here. We just got a nice little thing going on. And Noel will come over. And he says, "That's not enough fire. I need to go throwing charcoal in there on me." And I said, "Get out of here. I'm doing this." Next thing I know, that whole thing of chicken caught on fire, and I had 40 pieces of chicken all smoked on one side there, all black as can be. I felt so bad. We had to go to a wedding. It was a wedding rehearsal dinner, and serve that chicken. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to serve that to these people. So I just kind of tried hiding it by putting it on the bottom of the pan so they didn't see it when they first picked it up there. And oddly enough, most people said, "Oh no, I want that piece that's really dark. That's what all the flavor is." So you never really know, eh?
It's like the burnt hot dog thing.
That's right, you know. I don't mind a little char on my hot dogs.
Can't stand burning on top.
Woke up this morning, people, look round for a shoe. You know I had those neon walking blues. Woke up this morning, look round for my shoes. Yeah, yeah. You know I had those mean old walking blues. You know some people tell me, "Red blues ain't bad. That's the worst old feeling child ever had." People tell me, "Well, blues ain't bad." Woke up this morning, people, look round for a shoe. You know I had those neon walking blues. Woke up this morning, look round for my shoes. Yeah, yeah. You know I had those mean old walking blues. You know some people tell me, "Red blues ain't bad. That's the worst old feeling child ever had." People tell me, "Well, blues ain't bad." Woke up this morning, people, look round for a shoe. You know I had those neon walking blues. Woke up this morning, look round for my shoes. Yeah, yeah. You know I had those mean old walking blues. You know some people tell me, "Red blues ain't bad. That's the worst old feeling child ever had." People tell me, "Well, blues ain't bad."
For doing the cooking class, and stay tuned for our next cooking class on pulled pork coming up.